Do whatever the Hyundai you want.
Hey, I'm Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
G'day, I'm Marcus Ambrose.
Hey, this is Kenny Rowe, and you're listening to
The Fuel Pod.
This podcast covers all things motorsports. It's unfiltered, it's unabashed, and...
Ooh, we're going crazy. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fuel Pod, episode 66. I Saw the Sainz. Anyway, thanks for coming. Thanks for being here tonight and listening to the show. Got a lot to talk about. So we've got the Italian Grand Prix was this weekend at Monza, probably one of my top three races, along with, let's say, Spa and Silverstone. We also had the first playoff race in the NASCAR season, which was at Darlington. And then we also had the Portland Grand Prix. So a lot to get through, but we're going to start with, since this is first and foremost an F1 podcast, we're going to get started with the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Crazy weekend. Now, if you don't know, Monza is called the Temple of Speed, and it is super fucking fast there. It's the fastest they go all year. And we had, of course, Max Verstappen coming into the race with 9 Grand Prix wins in a row, which tied him with Sebastian Vettel, 2013, and Alberto Ascari. I don't know what year that was. I want to say the 50s, late 50s, early 60s, maybe. But anyway, it was a long time ago. So going into this weekend, chance to break the record and hold it on his own at 10 race wins in a row, which is a phenomenal feat. And everybody's wanting to know if he did it. Oh, he did. I think we all knew he was going to win it from the beginning. Nobody can touch that Red Bull car. However, it was an interesting race. So let's get into it. And I kind of decided just to go with 3 categories under this race tonight. We're going to talk about Ferrari, and we're going to talk about Red Bull, and then we're going to talk about the rest of everybody else. So, if you don't know, some Formula One races start out with a formation lap where they basically drive around behind a safety car for a lap before hitting their pit boxes. It gives them a chance to get an early warm-up on the tires. But, you know, in my life, I don't think I've seen a car retire on the formation lap. I'm trying to, and I mean, I'm no slouch in the brain pound when it comes to memory, but I got to tell you, I cannot remember a race. But got a buddy I've been watching these races with lately. You know, he calls himself a fair weather fan, although I'm pretty sure he's watched every race this year. But something always weird happens when he's watching these races. And this weekend, Yuki Tsunoda in the number 22 AlphaTauri car retired with engine failure on the formation lap. I don't even think he made it to turn 1 at Retifali. He pulls over the car. It's dead. When you watch the onboard, you could just hear the engine die out. So anyway, he's out of the race. Then we had this absurd circus where they did another formation lap, which takes 2 laps off the race. And then they pulled into the pits, and they couldn't decide if they wanted to let the pit crews out to service the cars early. And then they didn't know if they were going to do another formation lap or just get them in the boxes and get started. But we ended up doing another formation lap. And by the time it was all said and done, I'm pretty sure 3 laps were deducted from the lap count. So it was a pretty unique race start situation. Yeah, absolutely, Diddy. It was definitely. I mean, I had Yuki as one of my higher midfield cars finishing, but obviously I was killed. That was killed right from the beginning. So anyway, so we had Carlos Sainz on pole. And if you didn't watch qualifying, it was some electrifying qualifying. Probably too many eyeings in there, but so he qualifies on pole, P1, Max Verstappen on P2, Charles Leclerc, the other Ferrari, in P3. Sainz was a man on a mission this weekend. And of course, Monza is the Italian Grand Prix and Ferrari is Italy. And it's their home race. It's Ferrari as a company's home race. They were running a special livery to commemorate their Le Mans Victor hypercar this weekend. And so, I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for the race to start officially. And I'm thinking, well, Max is on the inside. He'll either get the jump on Carlos and take him after turn one, or he'll force him wide at turn one and take him after turn one, and it'll be Max's race and it'll be over. And thank God I was 100% wrong. Sainz got a great jump from the start. In fact, all three of them did. But Sainz had the best one. Got through Tifolo heading into the next set of corners at Monza, and held the lead. And he held the lead for almost 16 laps. No Formula One car this year has been able to hold off Max Verstappen for, I want to say 9 laps even, or 8 laps. And that time I'm pretty sure it was Checo that did it, his own teammate. But almost 16 laps with a Ferrari in the front. And, I literally looked at my buddy and texted another buddy and said, there's no way Ferrari doesn't already consider this a win. And, I just hope they didn't mess up the rest of the day. And they didn't. They did not fuck up. Their strategy was good. They didn't double box the cars by accident. Pit crews showed up with all 4 tires when they pitted. They pitted at appropriate times. And, Ferrari did just an outstanding job. And the thing that'll kill you about watching Carlos in this race is that not only did he have that almost 16 lap fight with Max, once Max did get by him, he was in I want to say 10, 12 lap fight with Checo. And they were just, it was balls to the wall trying to get around the corner, trying to dive on the inside or late break or whatever. And then once Checo got by, because that's both Red Bulls, he had a fight with his own teammate for the last 10 laps in a race, which, as a fan, you love it and you hate it at the same time, because they could take each other out and there would be no points awarded. And they desperately needed both cars to be in the points, and they desperately needed both cars to be P3 and P4, which is what happened. But I'm telling you, they made contact at least a couple of times in those last 10 laps. They were burning out. And, you get to turn one is the nastiest turn at Monza. And there was no shortage of activity from all 20 cars in that turn this weekend. Absolutely red-beard. It was, I think, Sainz this weekend showed why Formula One can be exciting when they decide to make it that way. And the post-race interviews with Sainz and Leclerc were great, because they were both talking about how fun, not, how much pressure they were under, or can they hold on to P2 in the constructors champ. Charles came in 4th, wasn't even on the podium, and he was happy for Carlos. He absolutely had a blast and was referencing previous racing where he got to do that. But and kudos to Fred Vassar as the team principal for letting these guys race, because he didn't have to. He could have said, hey, take it easy, stay behind him, just let it go, and we get 3rd, 4th. But that's not what he did. They absolutely raced hard till the end. So my hat's off to Ferrari this weekend. Great job. Restored my faith as a Tifosi. So good stuff. Now, as far as Red Bull, Max, congratulations, man. 10 wins in a row it's an unbelievable record. And I mean, I know me and whoever else watched that race live this weekend is always going to remember, hey, it was Monza in 23 when a guy won 10 races. There's not a Schumacher with 10 races in a row. There's not a Fangio with 10 races in a row. Any number of great drivers of all time. Alonso, my favorite driver, not 10 in a row. That's an unbelievable feat. I think it's a testament to the focus that you put into your racing, and a testament to Adrian Newey and that engineering team that put together that Red Bull car. Outstanding job. Let's talk about Checo Perez, the other Red Bull driver. So turn one at Monza is a chicane. I mean, it's a hard turn chicane. You're braking at like the 150-meter board on that one before you even get to it. So it's a hard right into an immediate turn back on itself, hard left. I'm pretty sure Checo overran that turn more than he actually made that turn this weekend. And yeah, that's an exaggeration. But there was at least twice up against George Russell that he ran through the turn. George ran through it with him one time. And then it was the Ferrari cars trying to get around them and did the same thing, and he ran through it again. So I don't know what he was trying to do, if it was straight up dive bombs into the corner and just hoping he made it, but guess what? He didn't. Anyway, still pulls out a P2, which is also testament to that Red Bull car that he was able to do that and put in some solid work. And I think one thing I take away from this for him is that even though he went hard into turn one, he kept that car out of danger. He avoided danger like the plague, and he did exactly what Red Bull wanted him to do: back up Max Verstappen and come in P2. So hats off to him as well. The rest of the field, we talked about Yuki Tsunoda already. He was a no start or a DNF. Technically, well, he actually didn't start the race. Formation lap doesn't count as qualifying for start of race. The other piece I want to talk about is Alpine, who looked just lights out awesome last week. Really good racing prowess and savvy on the track, and just absolutely blew it this week. And I don't even know where to start on that. I'm not even going to try to. It was just a mess. Esteban Ocon ended up, I think he DNF'd as well. Pierre Gasly just never really got started, which sucks because, I like Gasly, and I think he's a real fighter in that midfield, and just didn't see it this weekend. So it was really tough watching him. Another team that was hard to watch, and I'm not even a big fan of them, even though they're the only American team on the grid, was Haas, because I do love their drivers. K-Mag and Hulkenberg came to play. The team came to play, but guess who didn't come to play? The damn car. You got to have the car. We talk about it all the time, how Formula One is a three-part system. You got to have the team, which strategy rolls up under that. You got to have the car, and you got to have the driver. And they had two of the three, and it just goes to show you that even with one of those things missing, you're coming in at the rear of the field, and that's exactly what happened. K-Mag and Hulkenberg drove the lights off that car, but the car wasn't there. So here we are again with them backing up the field. Next to that, we'll talk about Lando first. Lando Norris. I've never seen a guy work his ass off for an 8th position finish. He was constantly in that midfield fight. The last part of it with Alex Albon, and I'll talk about that in a second, but Lando was, he was duking it out there, and he looked at the rear of Albon's gearbox for I don't know how long, probably 20, 30 laps. And at the end of the day, it is what it is, but he came in P8, so here we are. Fucking Alex Albon in a Williams. I made fun of Williams for, before this show, cracking on Williams. Not a big Williams fan. Chad texted me this weekend, and he's like, what the hell's going on with Williams? And I'm like, well, buddy, you've been out of the loop for a while, and so they're fast now. And there's really no other way to say it, and it's not the whole team that's fast. Logan Sargent's still trying to figure it out, and I don't think he's got much time left to do that. But Alex Albon, at this point, I'm thinking, man, he can go anywhere. He could literally go anywhere after this season. I don't think he's going to leave Williams. I think he's one of those guys. He's kind of that old school company man where, he's going to dance with the one that brought him. But man, he was just driving the wheels off of that car this weekend. He was lightning fast. That Williams, we already know it's lightning fast in a straight. I don't want to quote Lewis Hamilton from a few weeks ago and say it was a rocket ship, because he was talking about McLaren, but he was fast, man, and he kept ahead of Lando that last part of the race. He could have probably finished higher than P7, but there was a couple situations there which led to him staying right where he was. But anyway, excellent job to Alex Albon, and excellent job to Williams for creating a car that's that fast in a straight. All right. So that is the Italian Grand Prix. Let's talk about, well, we'll move on to Rip from the Paddock. Rip from the Paddock, of course, the category we started a few weeks ago, probably about 8 weeks ago now, pulling articles off of Formula One's website and not reading them. And I'm just going to go through a few of them right here, and we'll talk about what I think they mean. So the first one is Christian Horner says it's inevitable Red Bull's dominance will come to an end. Yeah, and I think that's Horner just being smart, and it's pragmatic. Every dynasty ends. I'm a New England Patriots fan, so nobody knows better than me that, my whole childhood, all they did was lose, and then my whole adult life, all they did was win, and now they're back to not having Tom Brady, and it's all they do is lose. So I get it, and I know Red Bull, somebody's going to figure out the formula, or Red Bull's going to screw up the formula, and they'll fall off the board at some point. It's not this year. I don't think it's going to be next year. At the very least, I think there might be cars that can actually, instead of just thinking that they're competing, they can actually say they're competing next year, but it's going to be a little bit. But yeah, their dominance will come to an end at some point. And I think, call Christian whatever you want, but a realist is definitely what he is. He doesn't pull punches when it comes to that. And I think that he's absolutely correct. And any team principal would probably tell you that anybody's dominance eventually will come to an end. There's always somebody that's going to be better and faster eventually. So I think that was pretty straightforward. The next one, it's a quote. It's what we deserved. Alonso says Aston Martin needs to learn from tough Monza weekend after salvaging a P9. Again, he's absolutely correct. Last week they looked great. Alonso was back on the podium. I actually didn't think they would be as fast this past weekend, and they weren't. I think that car is one of the best all-around cars on the grid, but, when you're the jack of all trades and master of none, a track like Monza will expose that. So they have a fast car in straights, and they have an agile car in low braking zones. And they do decent hard braking zones. But when you're talking about the stretch of straights at Monza, I mean, they're pretty long. I mean, not any one of them is crazy long, but just the amount of time you spend flat out at Monza or at the very most lifting, I think it exposed that car's weakness and what they need to work on. And you take a guy like Alonso, two-time world champion, 42 years old, he's going to know that. And I think that was just smart, not to pick on the team or not to pick on any one thing, and just realize that, yeah, it's something they need to look at and get better. George Russell, not satisfied with 5th place at Italian GP, despite achieving the maximum result possible. Okay, so first off, let's be clear, and I think anybody that's watched this for a while or is a fan of Formula One, George Russell is not going to be satisfied with anything that's not podium or better. Mercedes doesn't have the car for that. They definitely didn't have it at Monza. They did achieve, I think, better than what they thought they were going to achieve. But, George, buddy, it's coming. It's going to be a while maybe. But, you're going to be up there at some point on a regular basis. And, I think you know that, and I think Toto knows that, and Mercedes knows that. It's just a matter of they got to get that car in the shop and figure it out. So, anywho, that is everything Formula One for the Italian Grand Prix. So, IndyCar. Oh, God. So we were in Portland for the IndyCar. Beautiful town. If you've never been there, make sure you make your way out to the Pac Northwest and visit. Really cool place. Scott Dixon going into this race, second place behind Alex Palou by, I think, almost 100 points. Really no way to salvage that. But I got to tell you, from the beginning of this race till about, I want to say 2/3 of it being complete, it was Scott Dixon. It looked like Scott Dixon's race to me. And I can only speak for me. But it looks like he had it. He obviously did not. There was more elbows out racing in this IndyCar race than I've seen in a while. It was kind of crazy. Alex Palou, who was your championship leader, it just looked like he was back there biding his time, which reminds me of another guy when we get to the NASCAR race. But he just kind of sat back there doing his thing. Kind of surrounded by the McLaren cars there for a while, but he pulls out the victory, man. So congratulations to him. This is his second championship in 3 years. That's an incredible feat, especially considering how young he is. Still has so many years left to go. Hats off to Dixon and his team, though. They did a great job in holding P2 this year. There was tons of contact in this race. There were cars spinning out into the gravel, spinning out in the grass. And I'll talk about some of that when I get to my back markers, because it was kind of just, it felt like it was unnecessary. You know, some of the people I saw out there, Erickson and Kirkwood, Rossi, and those guys just getting spun out. Lundgaard, I think, either was or caused one at some point. Romain Grosjean, let's just stop. But anyway, season's almost over. They only got one race left, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, you know, my hat's off to Pelot. 2 championships in 3 years is nothing to sneeze at, and good job to him and his team. All right, NASCAR. So this weekend, NASCAR was at Darlington for the You Got Busted Kissing Your Sister 500. Sorry, they've got to come up with better names for these things, or I'm just going to keep coming up with my own names for them. And before I get into talking about this NASCAR race, there was something from just the sportscasting that just, I don't know, man, it tweaked my funny bone. So a few years ago, me and my friends, we used to all go to Buffalo Wild Wings to watch UFC fights. And there was a drinking game we played that evolved around guessing who was going to win the fight. But the other drinking game we played was that every time Joe Rogan said Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you had to take a drink. And you could get absolutely schlockered just on that drinking game alone. If you're from across the pond, you British guys that might be watching this, knackered would be the term, but you could get completely schlockered playing the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Joe Rogan drinking game. So watching the NASCAR footage this weekend, came up with a new one called the Toe Link game. Now, not reporting on NASCAR for years, but, you know, watching it for years and years, growing up, attending races, especially in my, late 20s, went to quite a few races. You hardly ever heard the words toe link. Know what it is, but I have, hardly ever hear it. It feels like every race, it's like if they don't have something to say as far as a wreck or what caused damage on a car or how did it spin out, it's like every time that toe link's broke. Oh, it's the toe link. Oh, he's going to watch out. He's going to break the toe link. It's as bad as Tom Cruise in War of the Worlds movie or whatever it was when he kept saying everything was a solenoid. It's like he just learned the word solenoid, so that's what he was going to say. But like Dale Jr., all of them. It was the toe link. So new possible drinking game if you're looking for one while you're watching a NASCAR race and they're pack racing and you can't tell who's possibly going to win this thing, is every time you hear him say toe link, take a drink. It's the toe link drink game. So anyway, this was the first playoff race, and I got to tell you, I've actually been to Darlington. It's been a long time ago, 2001. Dale Jarrett won that race in the 88 UPS car. Mike Skinner caught on fire in the Circle D car, turn 3, midway between turn 3 and 4. So pretty memorable event. Darlington's a weird track. Hated the grandstands there. Felt like I was sitting on top of the person below me. But that's not an easy track. The one next week's not that great either. But Darlington's not an easy track. You kind of got to ride it weird on every turn. But it was a great venue for a playoff race because I think it really probably tests the mettle of these drivers. But, I really liked Chris Bell at the beginning, but he kind of had he had a pit stop that lasted like 15.9 seconds or something. It looked like they got a jack stuck or dropped the jack under the car anyway. They had to re-raise it to get the wheel on. And so he slow pit really kind of cost him the rest of his day. Although later in the day, he hit the wall pretty hard, turn 3 or 4. And then later on, he got spun out. So it kind of messed his whole day. But he was looking pretty good early. Stage 1, Reddick and Hamlin pretty much fighting the entire entire stage. I think Reddick got in that position where, do I beat my boss or do I just kind of hang back and make sure he doesn't get wrecked out? Which he chose the latter and deferred to his boss. And at the end of the stage, Bubba Wallace spins out. And remember, I said that because we're going to talk about it again later. But Bubba Wallace spins out in the McDonald's car, and Hamlin wins stage 1. So, other than that, pretty uneventful stage 1. Not as uneventful as stage 2, although there was one significant event in stage 2. So Hamlin and Larson, and this is why I was talking about kind of just fighting your way, surging your way up the front. But, Kyle Larson, he wasn't by any stretch of the imagination, he wasn't in the back. But he was having to fight his way up there, which he did stage 2, and it was Hamlin and Larson fighting for the lead pretty much the entire stage. So then we had this weird incident involving Austin Cindric and Gibbs, and Cindric got spun around and Gibbs T-boned him into the wall, which caused a wreck and brought out a caution, obviously. But that was towards the end too, and Hamlin ends up winning stage 2. Now, stage 3 was a complete fiasco. So at some point, stage 3, Newman wrecks, ends up in the wall, and I can't remember who hit him or what happened, but it absolutely led to a fucking for Kevin Harvick. So if you know anything about pit science in NASCAR, so there's a wreck, they'll immediately lock down pit lanes, so you're not allowed to pit, and they'll flash this red light. But Harvick had already done going to be pit lane, but then the red light came on. Holy crap! I got some weird going on my computer here. Okay, so he's down into the infield track heading to pit lane, but then the red light comes on and he enters pit lane. NASCAR has to do something about this because the wreck literally was right in front of him, and he was already down there. Oh, yeah, I did have a weird computer thing and a camera thing going on. So anyway, sorry. Kevin Harvick turns down into like he's going to pit lane. Then the wreck happens out in front of him, coming out of turn 4. Then the red light comes on. So there was nothing he could have done. There was no way that he could have seen that the red light was going to come on. It was just an absolute crazy catch-22, perfect storm of events that led to him getting screwed penalty-wise. A lot of other cars literally bucked it right back out onto the track when they saw the red light, but Harvick was right beside the red light when it came on. So he gets absolutely screwed for stage 3, and he was having a decent run. And then we have the incident involving Alex Bowman reverting back into a play school yard 12-year-old. So Bowman has Suarez behind him. They're riding middle of the track, kind of high, and Suarez gets a run on him. Obviously, he's right behind him. He's in the slipstream. Cuts down on the inside. Well, Bowman sees it and cuts right back down in front of him. And so what does Suarez do? He does what any racer would have done. He cut back to the outside, and, man, he had him dead to rights. And freaking Bowman came right back up on him and caught the rear of his own car into the front end of Suarez's car, and both of them go for a spin. It was stupid. It was immature. You can't blame any of it on Suarez. He was racing, and Bowman was being a kid. And Bowman, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but that's what you were doing. That's what you were doing. There's really no place in professional racing for that. It's going to happen. People are going to get tempers and tensions are going to rise, and it's the end of the race. And I get that, but man, come on. It was really kind of shitty to watch. But anyway, that's where we are on that. And then Larson and Reddick, of course, still fighting for the lead. Larson had some of the craziest wall riding. So if you think back to last year and the Ross Chastain wall riding move from hell, where I'm going to make a movie analogy on this one, hopefully. So Ross Chastain was like the lobby scene from Matrix when Neo and Trinity went in there, and it was just complete blood and guts and spit and ass everywhere. And that was him. Okay. And then what Larson was doing yesterday was like what DK did in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift in that parking garage. And he was just putting it right next to the wall, eighth of an inch from the wall, not hitting it, and just consistently coming around on laps and riding that close to the wall without touching it. It was a master class in correct wall riding. Hats off to him for that. But, you know, he was able to pull out the win. And so Kyle Larson, you know, has got one playoff win in the bank, and that's pretty exciting. They go to, well, we'll talk about that later. So anyway, so my podium for the week, this is the first time in the history of the Fuel Pod that my podium contains one driver from each of the disciplines mentioned tonight. So my first, or let's go from 3 to 1. Third place goes to Kyle Larson for biding his time and getting up there and winning the race. Second place goes to Alex Palou, young, 2 out of 3s, IndyCar champion. Had a great race there where it could have been complete hell, and he made it through. So good job. And then first place on the podium goes to the smooth operator, which is Carlos Sainz in the number 55 Ferrari. If this was NASCAR, he'd be like, well, the number 55 Ray-Ban Ferrari today did a great job out there. But yeah, he's my first place on the podium. So brings me to my back markers. The people that pissed me off this weekend or didn't do that great this weekend. Number 3, and it pains me, man. I mean, it pains me to say it, but Romain Grosjean. So for all you people that haven't watched Drive to Survive or just absolutely have outlawed it in your life and don't remember the 2018-19 Formula One seasons, Romain Grosjean was a driving terror on the track. There were pit crews that would place bets before the race on if he was going to make it out of turn 1. However, he survived his Formula One career, and that's all I'm going to say in case you do want to watch Drive to Survive at some point, season 3, episode 9. And he went to IndyCar. So he's in it. He goes to IndyCar, loves it there, and he's made his place there. And there was a lot of P2s, at least top 10 races. But lately, like the last 6 or 7 races, it's looked like F1 Romain Grosjean. This race, I think it was the first lap, gets spun out. He's in the grass. Don't know if it was his fault. Don't give a shit. But he ended up 11 laps down. Really can't recover from that. And then later he just retired the car. So really upset for him, and he definitely hits third place on my back markers. Alex Bowman, who I just mentioned from stage 3 of the NASCAR race, he hits my back marker list for, not being an adult when he's in a race car. It was shitty to watch. If you get a chance to go back and watch the highlights from that, just fast forward on the YouTube video to like stage 3, if wherever that is, or go watch the full race replay and get to stage 3. But it was just a shitty move he pulled. Anyway, so he was number 2, and number 1 is Alpine, because they broke my heart this past weekend. Because, I like that team. I've always been a Renault guy, secretly, but and Gasly's, like I said, he's such a fighter in the midfield, and they looked so good last week, but they look like just shit, like hammered shit all weekend at Monza, and it was upsetting. And I hope they put something together for Singapore, but I don't think they will. Singapore is not going to favor Alpine, and we'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, that's my podium and my back markers. So, Fuel Pod news. Let's talk about what's coming in motorsports. So, we do not have a Formula One race this weekend. It's the following weekend, which will be, I think, the 15th that weekend. It'll be in Singapore. And folks, if you have not watched the Formula One race at Singapore, you've been missing out in your life. It's a night race because it's hot as hell over there and humid. I think the race over there, local time over there, is 8 p.m. It'll be at 7 a.m. here if you're in the Central Time Zone, so adjust accordingly. 8 in the Eastern, 11 in the Western Time Zone. But it'll be 7 a.m. here in the Central Time Zone. But it's a night race. They've had 9,000 lights around that track. I think they actually increased it. For the drivers, it feels like they're driving in a tunnel the entire time. Go pull up some footage of any Singapore Grand Prix, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But most of the drivers lose like 5 to 7 kilos of weight during this race, which is nuts. I mean, that's crazy. They don't have much to lose anyway. I need to go drive a Formula One car. Anyway, other things we got going on in racing, crazy other series is that I usually get picked on for. Now I don't have to worry about it getting picked on for liking other series of racing. But World Endurance Championship, the WEC, they're at Fuji this weekend in Japan. It's a 6-hour race. It's the Fuji 6-hour. It's the last race of the season, I'm pretty sure, because I think they go to Bahrain for an 8-hour, which I can't think of anything worse on earth than having to drive at Bahrain for 8 hours. It's hard enough doing it for an hour. So anyway, they're at Fuji 6-hour this weekend. If you've never seen Fuji, it is it's not an easy circuit. I don't think it's an easy circuit. Diddy made a comment the other day. He sent me a text message. He said, "Hey, I'm looking at the track map for Fuji, and it looks like a lion with a fat ass." And depending on which way you turn the track map, yeah, he's absolutely correct. It looks like a lounging lion with a fat ass, but it is a tough technical circuit. I mean, it's one of those hold on to your balls type circuits. It's just there's some good straights in it. Sure, there's good places to make speed up, and there's some of these cool sweepers that are in the sector 2 of it that are kind of cool if you hit them right. If you don't hit them right, you're in trouble. But the beginning of the lap and towards the end of the lap, really tight, really tough. Typical Japanese circuit racetrack if you're on this side of the pond. But it's a 33 car field, so it's a pretty huge field. It's a multi-class event, so there's 3 different classifications of cars in this. We've got hypercars, we got LMP2s, and we got GT Am cars, which would be the cars that most people are familiar with. It's more the cars that you see on any exotic car lot. But so some notable entries if you follow World Endurance or you follow crazy racing teams. But the Iron Dames, which is the all women's team, really big fans of these girls. Ladies, they do a great job. Had a great Le Mans a couple years ago. They'll be driving the pink number 85 Porsche. So if you're watching for them, and they're in the GTE Am class. Sebastian Buemi, if you're a motorsports fan, everybody knows who Seb Buemi is. So he's driving the Gazoo Racing number 8 hypercar. He's won Le Mans more times than I can think about. He won it one year with Fernando Alonso. He's competed in Dakar. He's kind of one of those everyman for racing type of guys. So really cool. He's in it. And then former Formula One driver Antonio Giovinazzi drove for Alfa Romeo, reserve driver for Ferrari. He is in the 51 AF Corsa Ferrari hypercar this weekend. So should be an interesting 6-hour race at Fuji. NASCAR, they're in the not a fucking thing to do in Kansas 400, which is, at Kansas. It's a 1.5 mile oval, if you want to call it that. Not the easiest track to drive, I'm sure. But second playoff race. Some guys to watch for in Kansas, I think. If you're looking at Kansas, just from previous things, I think you should look at Chase Elliott. I think Denny Hamlin's always going to be a challenge there. Larson's a challenge, doesn't matter what track it is. But I really liked where Tyler Reddick was this weekend. It felt like he was always in the hunt, like he's really searching down for a victory. And, take a gander at him this weekend and see where he finishes up. He might have a horrible weekend, but I really liked his racing at Darlington, and I think we'll see more of that at Kansas. IndyCar, they have their last race of the season. It's the Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey. Be Sunday afternoon as usual. And Rally's got, well, it actually started today, but the Rally Greece is this weekend. I don't know how many Rally fans we got out there, but Rally Greece is a tough one. It's dry, it's gravel. There's some dirt on it. But it's loose grass. It's going to be a tough course. It's narrow at spots. It's dangerous at so many spots. If you can pull up any footage on WRC Acropolis in Greece, it's pretty scary stuff watching that. So that's all I got this evening, folks. I want to thank you guys for hanging in there tonight and being with me here as we head through the previous racing weekend and head into this one. Looking forward to next week as we preview Singapore a little more in depth and talk about the results from this past weekend with the NASCAR playoff race. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you next week.